So, Phil, with the ban restricted announcement coming up, in a little less than a week, I guess. Yeah, now it would be a little less than a week. This will be Tuesday. It gets dropped next Monday. I wanted to kind of clarify specifically for us what our ideal situations would be. You wrote an entire article that's up on eternaldurtles.com. Would it be up by now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have that there. I'm working on something in that regard as well. So we both have a clear, this is our moment in time of this particular banner restricted announcement. I'm going to give you the gist of mine because I only have the thoughts so far. You've written an entire article, so you obviously have a lot more worked out in this. But for me, I figured there's a couple sentences that I kind of leaned on for mine. So there's a goal to the banner restricted announcement, right? I think that something that is kind of unstated when there's a BNR is that this is a game is a game mechanic, the banner restricted announcement, that is there specifically to increase player enjoyment and engagement and to make the game playable. You know, when the game is basically left unchecked, it sort of becomes unplayable, or you can only play like one or two decks, right? So the ban and restricted announcement is a pressure valve, much like Force of Will is a pressure valve, right? To kind of fix the format when things get too dicey, right? So my particular choice for what should be done is the result of looking at the banner restricted announcements for the last couple of years, specifically as Demir Reanimator has increased in power, and just look at it and say, hey, look, this isn't working. What we've been doing lately is not working. Like, obviously, we just keep coming back. We're having the same conversation every 3 months, right? I had that episode with Crucible Words where I was like, hey, how about you tell me when you think the next BNR will happen? That'll be clean. There won't be anything on it. And Crucible Words said what I pretty much predicted was like maybe 2026 sometime. And I think that's unacceptable. I think that the whole idea of the reason why we have a ban restricted announcement is so that you don't have to keep having them, right? So with that in regard, this is a result of a diagnosis of a cancer that has been festering for over a year, and it's well past time for radical extraction. That is my thesis for what's going on with my particular ban and restricted announcement. So you ban the Ubs creatures, you ban Balustrade Spy, Undercity Informer, Atraxa, and Entomb. Hard stop on that stuff. Then we have a rules clarification. They change the way that the MDFC lands work, so that we don't end up in this situation where people are taking cards that aren't meant to be used the way they are, just like Tybalt's Trickery and what is it, Valky, where they changed all that stuff so that you couldn't just be like, oh, I'm just gonna flip the other half of this in. Boom and Bust was a card that people used off of Cascade for a while.
They changed the Cascade rules, what you're referring to.
Exactly. So what my guess is here, no one can know for sure, but the reason why I'm doing these changes is specifically so that I think ultimately we have very different beliefs, Phil and I, about what our methods are, but the ultimate goal is relatively the same. I think here is to make it so that control is once again viable in the format. That is the one through line of both of our BNR announcements, I think.
3-for-1 Trading is buying all Magic the Gathering singles and entire collections, big and small.
They're one of the top trading card game traders, buying way over 1 million Magic cards a year, and they are more than happy to make an offer on your cards.
In addition to sending in your cards, you'll also have a chance to sell and trade with them at MagicCon Las Vegas, taking place from June 20th to 22nd.
You can support the channel by using the link 341.gg/sell-ed.
Huge thanks to 3-for-1 Trading for supporting the Legacy community. Now back to the show.
So I would argue that I don't fully agree that that's the goal. the article that I wrote regarding the desire to boon controls metashare is one that I spoke to as somebody who, like, I feel confidently that I can speak as a representative of, like, the control faction of the legacy community. But I wrote to that narrative because it's a narrative that has been like carried through the last 2 years worth of ban cycles.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that there has been a collective assessment from WotC and Legacy, the community otherwise, that there's any particular macro archetype strategy that is entitled to be any percentage of the metagame whatsoever.
I'm not saying that we're arguing for control to be the best thing in the format, just so that it's playable. But before we litigate that, let me get to the end of my statement, because it's relatively short, right? So in doing these bans, Dimir seeds metashare back to Izzet and Temur tempo lists, right? You're not just going to have all the people who are playing Reanimator because it was the viable best deck in the format. They're not all just going to play Dimir. Like, they will, some percentage of those people will play Izzet, the Corey Steel Cutter deck. They'll play the Temur tempo deck if that becomes something that it depends on whether or not what's it called questing druid is viable. So you have those, and then some number of other players will change to other decks, right? Not everyone's going to play dedicated Reanimator anymore, because you'll have to be dedicated. You'll have to be playing Careful Study and Faithful Saluting if you want to actually play Reanimator, right? Or maybe you aren't playing both of those, right? So Control gets to prey on those tempo decks, which allows Control to exist again. But they do have to worry about Orcish Bowmasters still. So I said in my statement, we're still keeping an eye on Orcish Bowmasters. I personally, as a non-game designer, I would like that to go. But I did not include that in this particular ban announcement that I've come up with, specifically because I don't think that they're going to do it. I think that it does need to go, but I think that they're at a point right now where the cancer is so thick that they can't see the other symptoms. They don't realize that there's a flu as well, right? So combo decks in the format now then become Doomsday, Sneak and Show, Cephalid Breakfast. Dedicated Reanimator goes back to being a like tier 2.5, 2.5, and that's really truly where I believe that particular deck belongs, is in that, like, if people aren't respecting the graveyard, we get you, right? That in that particular scenario is where I think, just like Affinity in Modern used to be the deck that, like, people would just flock to occasionally, and okay, we got to put our graveyard hate back in our decks, we got to put our artifact hate back in our decks, that sort of thing. So overall, my goal here is to increase the turns per game in Legacy by about 2 turns. So that's what I think would happen with my particular BNR. Now, Phil, let's go into yours.
Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield.com. Moxfield is the best deck building website on the internet. You can find all of my and Phil's decks in links below, including decks from this episode. And if you do, you'll be directly supporting the channel.
Or do you want to talk about anything that I just said?
So, in all of the conversations that we've had regarding BNRs, and like we've said every other time we've had a BNR, we say that we have the same conversation over and over again.
Yeah.
So I want to address that, and then I also, like, in a way that we haven't before, and then I also want to speak to how listening to all the other content creators, all of the other Legacy podcasts, and their takes on what should happen in the ban lists in this upcoming BNR. I've also published 5 articles, not including mine, regarding the upcoming BNR, both in favor of banning certain cards, and then other articles from other writers defending those cards. So gotten a bit of a swath of where the community sentiment is regarding everything, and where the arguments stand. And what I have noticed the trend being, beyond what people are calling for banned or not, is the rationale for those bans,
yeah,
and the inconsistencies thereof. and I want to address those inconsistencies and perhaps give us a means by which we could address what we're all trying to talk about through the same lens.
Okay.
And so what my article on the site, which is live right now, endeavored to do is to essentially bracket the arguments in such that we can place cards in those particular categories to then speak to those categories as the means by which we would ban or not ban something.
Mm-hmm.
So it breaks down.
And what are those categories?
So it breaks down what I would consider the 4 rational ideologies for banning a card, and those are power level, just straight up hard power level, like this card is broken and cannot exist.
Yep.
If it is unfun, like there is a large enough portion of the community that feels that playing against this card at a certain play rate is so souring to the experience of playing Legacy that they don't want to play anymore.
That they don't want it, yeah.
Right. That is where I think Oops falls into right now, and we'll talk about that. Then I think that there is the two ones where people get really lost in the sauce, and that is an offender, which is what I would consider cards that are lingering on the cusp of being pushed into the power level category or into the unfun category, or both. So the cards that people are calling for bans are the cards that they find to be offenders, but we have not communally agreed that yet to categorize them as unfun the way that we have with Oops.
Sort of a warning bracket, as it were.
It's essentially the cards that are...
They're on the watch list.
It is essentially the watch list. It's the top of the watch list, right? It is the cards that are so so wholly powerful compared to the rest of the format that we can argue to ban them on the precipice that they are about to, they are essentially in that category, just it is not universally agreed upon yet. The example that I made for something of power level that is like, if it were to be banned because of power level, is something like Urza Saga, right? Like, you could argue that Urza Saga maybe is unfun, but really the argument for what Urza Saga would do after its power boost would be that, it is just a power level outlier, such that it was like restricted in Vintage. Now there's contexts for why it's super powered in Vintage, but like if Urza Saga ever were to get banned, it won't this cycle, it won't for a long time, who knows if it ever will. But if it ever were, the argument for it would be because it is in that power level category.
Yes.
And then the last category, which I think is the one that
no one's quitting Magic because two constructs came into play, right? Like they're not like, oh, that was not fun. My opponent played two Keldon Warlords on me,
And the rationale for why certain cards I feel like don't really lean into the unfun category sometimes is the last category, which is the Oppressors.
Yeah.
And I categorize the Oppressors as essentially the cards that limit what the format's capacity is. And there are the two main offenders that I think are currently in the format are Daze and Orcish Bowmasters. Now, we've talked about Daze before, and the rationale for Daze is that Daze makes it so that there is a swath of the card pool available in Legacy that would never otherwise get to see the light of day solely because Daze exists. Not whether or not you were to play against Daze, but because Daze exists, nobody even endeavors to play a card in the first place. Mm-hmm. That is an oppressive warp of the format that Daze imposes itself on.
Yeah.
And I think Orcish Bowmasters is the same. Now, for a different kind
for
of
different
card,
reasons. Yeah.
But I think Orcish Bowmasters also oppresses. And an example that, like, if you, like in the article I write, if you or have heard anyone else talk about how, it would be interesting or cool to play this creature, but it has 1 toughness and you can't do that because Orcish Bowmasters exists.
Sure.
I would really like to play this card that costs 2+ mana that draws cards, but I can't because Orcish Bowmaster exists. An example of this is, speaking from the control, like we need to boon control side of things, I talk about how Stock Up has become like a very powerful, potent card that is seeing some Legacy play, and how it would be really interesting if the sorcery 3-mana dig through time versus the 3-mana go up a card Brainstorm in Brain Surge, that would be a really interesting dynamic between what kind of control strategy you would like to play, given the context of different formats.
Yeah.
What 3-mana card advantage blue card do you want to play? If you are playing something that's a little bit more tap out control, you're playing like Planeswalkers and like Supreme Verdicts and things of that ilk, maybe Stock Up is more potent for what you're trying to do because you're trying to assemble a specific thing at a certain time. Where Brain Surge might be better with something what I like to do, which is the miracle side of things. I want to set up the top of my library. I want to play at instant speed. I don't want to play tap out. I want to play draw go style control.
Mhm.
You can't play Brain Surge in a format where Orcus Bowmasters exist, because if you it is just so punishing for a card that is seeing the play rate that it sees. And I talk about the play rates in the article of where Orcus Bowmasters is at. Over the course of the last 2 months, it is the most played card, is the most played creature card aside from Tameo, which much of the community is calling for a ban for right now because they believe it, I believe, to be an offender. And I categorize it as such. But I think that also all of the cards that the format would otherwise get to see and interact with and add part of what feels like a healthy, vibrant, diverse format is obsoleted because Orcus Bowmasters exists. There are a ton of cards that don't see play just because this card exists in the format.
Mhm.
Now, another thing that has the argument for Bowmaster is, well, it's good to punish the cantrips. The cantrips are played at they're the most played cards in the format, Phil. They're all played at around 50% of the format. You gotta be it's good to be able to punish people for just pondering and brainstorming all the time.
Yeah, non-blue decks need a way to fight against the cantrip cartel.
So I argue that the arguments against the cantrip cartel, Ponder and Brainstorm, argue that it's good to punish the cantrips solely because they are the most played cards, even if the most played cards themselves are not unhealthy. There is nothing about Ponder or Brainstorm that tells you can't play the thing that you would otherwise want to play. There is nothing that Brainstorm and Ponder do that is oppressive. They aren't telling you can't do something. They aren't stopping you from doing what you want to do. Are they exceptionally powerful? Of course they're exceptionally powerful. If we want to talk about banning those cards because they breach the category that is of a power level 2 that exceeds what we agree to be the threshold for legacy.
That's a different conversation.
Let's have that conversation.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation altogether. But at least then we can talk about everybody. It's oh, well, you got to be able to punish Ponder and Brainstorm. They're the most played cards. They themselves are not unhealthy. If we agree that they are within the accepted power level, the argument solely to punish them or try and Orcus Bowmasters is good because this other thing, to me, that's a whataboutism type argument. Yeah. It is an argument that is not about what the actual pressure of what Bowmaster does and why it is bad. And even if we were to engage with that argument, is the punishing of Ponder and Brainstorm, which is not oppressing anything in the format, so in favor compared to the oppression that it does of not being able to play X1s, of certain types of card draw spells and cantripping type spells just not being able to see play because they otherwise are punished too heavily by Bowmasters. For reference, a single ponder, if you ponder into a Bowmaster, it's 5 damage. Right? It's the ETB ping, the ping off the ponder draw, and then 3 damage on the combat on the way back, and it has flash, so you can never use your ponder to play around a Bowmaster.
Yes.
And then anything that is at mana parity or more expensive than Bowmaster having flash means that you will never actually engage with that Bowmaster in favorable terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Bowmaster allocating its threat across multiple threats. So the lock piece is tied to the Bowmaster, but then the threat is built upon the thing on the side, while it also chunks you for a quarter of your life total for drawing a single card. And so a lot of the cards that see play, like Stock Up, like Rakshas's Bargain, like Nadu, like Atraxa, all of these cards inherently are powerful within the context of the format because the oppression of the format is supplied by Bowmaster. Those cards that don't draw cards but still go up cards have more value solely because Bowmaster exists. Like the argument of, do we always play Atraxa, or would we play Atraxa? Maybe we play Grizzlebrand, maybe we play something else. Like the argument is not even a conversation starter because Orcus Bowmaster exists.
Yeah. Now, I have other problems with
Bowmaster exists.
Yeah,
you can't.
I have other issues with Atraxa beyond it doesn't draw cards. But I see what you're saying there.
Like the argument of what is the BNR trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
The narrative of we want to boon control and mid-range strategies has been something that has happened from the several ban cycles.
Yeah, it's been
2 years
each one
at least.
Think your legacy or pre-modern deck is the truth?
Or total garbage? We'll play it either way.
Join our donation deck Patreon tier.
Choose Zac or Phil to run your deck through a league and maybe, probably, definitely, most, maybe even win every single game.
Go to patreon.com/eternaldurtles.
And people were talking about sowing Mycospawn. We have to ban sowing Mycospawn because it's keeping control out of the format. You can't even play control because if you run into sowing Mycospawn, it's just a non-starter, right?
And that was true, for sure.
And that was true, but the meta share of control did not move.
Yes.
right?
And why
it
is that?
remained as low as it was. So while sowing mycospawn might have been part of it, it wasn't it clearly was not. It demonstrably was not the reason that Control wasn't seeing
not the
a high enough
only reason, Phil.
It wasn't
Was
the
not
only reason.
Only reason.
Now,
that's important because people have pushed back. I got a piece of hate mail the other day from somebody that was like, "I blame Eternal Durdles for getting sowing mycospawn banned," and it's like that wasn't us.
that wasn't us, but I will take it as a badge of honor.
I love that. I love that for that person that they think that we got sowing mycospawn banned. That's great,
especially since we weren't the only content creators calling for that ban.
I wasn't coaching everyone. Hey, I think you should you should mention sowing mycospawn in your thing. Just for the record, whenever I interview people, I don't give them any information aside from I need your name, what you would ban, what do you think Wizards will do, and then I hit the record button. I don't speak to them until after the stop button has been hit about what I think should happen as far as the BNR, because I don't want to oil the waters as far as that's concerned.
To talk to the argument of like how if the goal of the BNR has been to boon the meta share of control strategies, mm-hmm. I think that like players speaking to that without having a collective mutual understanding as to what control is, and therefore look for a remedy that would solve it, is, I think, detrimental to the case. I think that like people joke. I wrote about how people joke like, "What is tempo? Anything can be tempo." It's this sort of like meme that doesn't mean anything and means everything at the same time. And you can just say something is tempo and it doesn't. Who cares? Like, but like you can't say like, "Oh, it's control." What is control? I don't think that there's a collective agreement as to like the strategies that people are actually looking to help boon in the legacy metagame. There are various types of strategies that can have controlling elements, but I personally would not classify as control. And I think it would be helpful to the BNR discussion as to like if helping control the macro type of control strategies is something that we want to endeavor to do with the BNR, then having a collective understanding as to the strategies that we're looking to help, I think would be helpful to us figuring out what are the cards we should go after.
Yeah.
As somebody who's played pretty much exclusively control for the past decade plus, here's what I would argue control is. Control are the strategies that endeavor to endure whatever the opponent is doing. All of the other macro types aim to win the game as fast as possible. If you're an aggro player, you're trying to win the game as fast as possible. If you're a combo player, you're looking to win the game as fast as possible. If you're a tempo player, you're looking to win the game as fast as possible, potentially a little bit less fast than what aggro is doing, but still you're trying to close the door as quickly as you can. Mm-hmm. Though if you're prison, you're trying to lock an opponent out as fast as possible to keep them from taking game actions. So like you aren't looking to win, you're just looking to lock them out as fast as possible. The goal is either to win or lock them out as fast as possible if you are combo, aggro, tempo, or if you're prison, right? If you are on the macro the macro control side of things, you aren't looking to win. You're looking to endure.
Sure.
That is what I think is the critical difference between when looking at what are the types of things that would help boon control versus what would help just boon thick mid range or tempo, right? Anybody who has suggested that control players play Tamiyo, I think like fail to like are offering that because Tamiyo is a power outlier. Not because Tamiyo is good for control strategies.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Because Tamiyo is doing nothing to help you endure. It is not trying to combat or solve a problem that you are expected to face in a metagame.
Not totally. I don't. I'm going to push back on the push back.
I'll caveat that when I say that, I mean that like yes, Tamiyo can stop you from losing games because it is an inherent power outlier, but it is not. You're not putting Tamiyo in your deck saying, "Oh, it is specifically because I'm trying to solve the problem of this deck in the format."
Yeah, no one's like, I need to get rid of one power creatures from swarming me, right?
I would argue control is inherently reactive because it is not like control does not dictate the terms of engagement. It is trying to endure whatever the terms of engagement are.
Yeah. No, I will agree with you there.
Right? Like control is always bad at the beginning of a new format or in a new format or right after post ban because when the goal is to endure, if you don't know what the threats are that you need to endure against, you can't properly play control.
And this is why, at the end of every ban cycle, once the format has sort of coalesced into what it's going to be, generally you tend to have a better win percentage. Your win percentage starts to scoot up a bit.
That's like an inherent trend that's going to be with any control strategy. Should any viable control strategy should have that trend.
Yeah.
But I think that, like, if we're saying, like, if we were to accept that definition, that's my definition as a control player that's exclusively played control for as long as I have. I think the goal of control is to endure. So at no point in the game, until I have endured, am I looking to win. Yes, you can steal games, and yes, you can pivot and all that stuff. But, like, if I pivot to, like, the Monastery Mentor plan post board, or like an attacking game plan post board, I am conceding being the control role. If I sit across from Cloud Post and I know that I don't have the tools, or the tools to beat Cloud Post are not available to me as a control mage, then I pivot off of being being the control player to try and get them dead as fast as possible. I become the aggro or the tempo or the whatever that I'm pivoting to in order to combat that matchup, because there is no other way to win it. But if I'm trying to win as the control player, I'm looking to endure. And so if that's an acceptable definition to people, listen on if you're willing to accept that is a definition for control. Then the way that we help control's metagame share is by allowing them the tools by which they can endure. Now, the reason that I think Orcish Bowmaster should be the target, if the goal is to boon control, specifically if it's to boon control, like, I don't think Orcish Bowmasters falls into the power level camp. I don't think it necessarily falls into the unfun camp, unless you're looking to play control because you are otherwise oppressed out of the format.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, we can look at it as an oppressor of the format. And part of that oppression, I think, is the macro type of control. Here's my argument for it.
Okay.
In order for control to endure, the tools by which it does that is lining up the answers that it is prepared for the threats it expects to play against.
Say that again.
In order to endure, which is the definitive means of being a control pilot, the control pilot needs to be able to align the answers that it has in its deck with the threats that it expects to face.
Yeah, I accept that.
Very broad strokes, but I'm talking about it in a specific capacity of the goal of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Not just like to stop the opponent. I am not looking to necessarily stop the opponent. I am looking to endure. Those are different things. The opponent can do all of the things they want to do. If I'm not dead, I'm enduring. In which case, the legacy control game plan is working.
Yeah.
Okay. So in order for me to endure, if the given circumstance of enduring as a control pilot is I need to be able to line up my answers to their threats, the means by doing that is the Cantrip cartel or selection.
Of course. Yeah, you need the selections is super important, obviously, because you need to be able to find the proper answers, right?
Now let me explain why that is not me saying, oh, Phil's just looking to get Bowmaster banned because he wants to be able to play Bonded Brainstorm. No. I don't necessarily think that control has to be like the argument of everybody wanting to boon control's meta share. Like, I don't think that there's anything about Legacy or Vintage or any other format that like requires that like this be part of the rock paper scissors. The rock paper scissors of Legacy could absolutely be tempo combo stompy. And if like that's the new paradigm that we're in, that's the new paradigm we're in. I don't think there's any macro type that is entitled to a viable competitive Legacy meta share.
But will you stop playing control if that becomes the situation?
No, because I enjoy control.
Exactly.
But that's not me saying like all the arguments that I'm making are not that like, oh, I'm entitled to this thing. I don't think anybody's macro type are.
I agree. I only asked because that is obviously inquiring minds want to know. That's the first thing people are going to ask.
Oh, that's just because that's what I enjoy. But like, if I were looking to spike a tournament, would I venture off of it? Yeah, probably, maybe. Like, maybe I go and I play a combo deck that like I think can do better if the goal is winning. But like, if I want to enjoy the format, then I'll play what I like. But going back to like the means of which control needs in order to endure against a wide swath of various threats. You've heard me talk about how you can draw the wrong half of your deck.
Yes.
We
all do that occasionally.
Yeah. If I draw white removal spells against Dark Ritual combo, I'm going to lose. If I draw only my counter magic against a blunt aggro deck, I'm going to lose.
Yeah.
I need to be able to sift between the like quadrants of answers and time them appropriately such that I can endure. So, in order, like I would assume the position that in order for control, under the definition that I've given in it, which is to endure, for control to exist in Legacy, it needs to have access to the suite of like cantrips or card selection such that it can align the answers to threats.
That is almost inherent in the just mechanic of Magic being a game with cards, a randomized deck of cards. You need that, right?
What I'm talking about is not novel.
Exactly.
I'm giving us a means to articulate the conversation so we know we're talking about the same thing. What I'm saying, I have not invented this idea. I'm simply giving it the words so that we can all talk about it and know that we all mean the same thing of what we're talking about. Orcish Bowmasters, by soft locking and punishing the means by which control can exist in such a the word that I've been using is oppressive, but in such a commanding fashion. If the goal was to actually boon control, the answer is ban Orcish Bowmasters. Because Orcish Bowmasters is oppressing something fundamental to what control needs to do in order to exist.
Yeah. Or you're going to have to print Brainstorm that doesn't draw you cards. Ponder that doesn't draw you cards.
Or you just essentially embrace
which would soft ban Bowmasters at that point, right?
Well, no, the thing is that would embrace the oppression, right? We would embrace we would embrace the oppressor, and that is we've seen that by like how WotC has designed cards, right? Anytime
stock up over brain search, right?
Anytime they have given like the second toughness for no reason, or anytime they do use the wording that doesn't draw but put cards in their hand or reveal cards and put them in your hand, those are explicit nods. Like they have an awareness that Bowmaster exists. Their design is influenced by an oppressor. I think it is healthier for format diversity to be able to play with the toys that are available rather than embrace the oppressors that don't let us play with them. That's my personal stance. Mm-hmm. If we actually wanted to have the big swing ban that I talk about that on the episode where I was like, I just want to see WotC like take a big swing. I think what I mean by big swing is don't go after like the most apparent offenders in
just the algae on the top of the swamp, right?
There's a ton of offenders right now, and like yes, it would be great if we went after the offenders because the offenders are on the cusp of being on the in the unfun category or in the power level category and needing a ban anyway. Like they're cusping on it. We're all aware that they're cusping on it. Like they're in perpetuity going to be in this conversation because they are so close to those categories that we would either need some sort of massive shift to decrease their play rate such that we don't experience them to a degree at which it's tilting, or we just get rid of them, right? Yeah. Like when like everybody's saying like, oh yeah, Nadu should go, but Nadu's not really doing enough right now. But like Nadu's power level is also inherently tied to the fact that it's good against Bowmaster. Now, like Nadu, Nadu's at 10% of the format between Breakfast and Bant Nadu right now. Sure. And it's like sort of at the bottom of like the what people are calling for. Like it's like it's in the conversation of being banned, but people are like, maybe not this time, maybe it's fine. But it's at 10%. Right? Mm-hmm. Oops has not exceeded 5%. It's currently at 3% as we're recording this.
Well, there was a point in time where it was at 12 or 15% at the start of the format. Now it settled down, but
I'm saying that like what is considered unfun, like unlike power level, which is just like this is too strong, or offenders, which are on the cusp of being too strong. Unfun is unique in that it is a power level. It is the category worth banning that is explicitly tied to play rate.
And it's not, but it also beyond like being tied to play rate, because that is what matters for that thing. Mm-hmm. The other data does not matter as much.
Well, that's what I'm arguing. I'm saying that like if you're too powerful, you're too powerful. Thus, your win percentage would likely would go up because you're too powerful. The same thing. The offenders, which are on the cusp of those things, are in the same are on that same trajectory. If you're unfun, you might not have the win percentage to warrant a ban. You might not be at a power level to warrant a ban. But if you are souring the experience such that we don't want to play the game anymore, that is go ahead.
The number that matters is actually the number of people showing up to your legacy event when the unfun things are happening.
Now, if the unfun thing was showing up at 0.5%, and so like when it happened once every 200 matches or whatever, and you're like, okay, yeah, I guess that deck exists, and I wasn't prepared for it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I get, yep, I got dredged. I wasn't prepared for dredge. It's just
Sure.
showing up,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like, there's not enough tools to combat against whatever that is nowadays. So like, I got like, if that was a once in a however long experience, the collective experience would be like, oh man, you played against that. I haven't seen that in years or whatever. I haven't seen that in however long.
Like how we would approach Charbelcher back in the day. You're like, Charbelcher, wild.
If it's not part of a consistent experience, then it's just not top of mind, and so therefore it just gets to exist in the format.
Yeah,
it's just like in the back end of a thing.
Like
that doesn't matter.
Oops used to, honestly,
like it used to be.
Yeah.
But like, does Oops have the win rate to warrant a ban? No. Is Oops at a power level to warrant a ban? Not necessarily. Is it unfun enough? That has been what the collective experience is. So unfun is a unique category. I think Sowing Mycospawn was banned because it was unfun, not because it was actually doing any of the stuff that we were arguing. Like we can look back and look at what has happened. Even though it may have been in part removing like certain macro types from the format, I think most people were just like, this is unfun to get strip mined and wastelanded on turn 2. And so it went. But like, Mycospawn never exceeded 6% of the meta. It's in the same position as Oops.
Well, this is also, I think, why Ren and 6 got banned. Because people were sick of not being able to play. Like, it was either you were playing with snow-covered basics or you were playing with no lands in play.
I'm saying for this upcoming ban, and who knows, like WotC may have already like made their decision and written the article, because they're going to have to figure out the fact that Standard looked absolutely atrocious for their Final Fantasy Pro Tour, right?
Yeah.
So they may have already written the article, and like, who knows? But I think that if we actually want to help Control as a macro strategy, if we want to actually help Legacy feel healthier and more diverse, the goal should be to prioritize Oppressors. First and foremost, get rid of Oppressors. Once the Oppressors are gone, then we can debate the Offenders. The Offenders are going to wax and wane depending on the context of what is seeing play, what is at the top tables. There is metagame movement to happen with Offenders.
Yeah.
Right? There is not metagame movement to happen with Oppressors. Oppressors inherently stranglehold the format to what the format looks like.
Yeah.
The Offenders are the Offenders because of the oppression that the format is under. So if we want to have a healthier format, I would say prioritize the Oppressors. Then, when there aren't Oppressors in the format, we can look at Offenders. Unfun stuff, get it the fuck out of here. Power level stuff, it has to go because it is clearly broken. Offenders, we can debate. Oppressors, we should prioritize.
Yeah.
And I think that like once the Oppressors are gone, the stuff that has paid for Oppressors' sins can be let off the leash and tested as Offenders.
Yeah.
Dreadheart Arcanist, Psychic Frog, Ragavan, all the cards
Troll
that
of Khazad Doom, of course.
Troll of Khazad Doom.
Yeah.
All the cards that are banned for Daze's sins, Daze was an Oppressor. Those cards were like snowball power level because of the oppressions of the format.
Mm-hmm.
We can try them out as Offenders and then debate their power level within the context of what the format looks like without any Oppressors in it.
Yeah. Well, Phil, I think we've beaten this horse to the point of what I would say for people to do. One, comment below what do you think the Oppressors of the format are? Do you agree? Are Daze and Bowmasters the only two format Oppressors, or can you see other ones? And then also, obviously, check out Phil's article at EternalDurdles.com. If you want to write for EternalDurdles.com, you can do that. All you have to do is submit an article to @ForceOfPhil on any number of social medias, and Phil will help you get that up on the site, and he'll do the editing. If you're not like a classical writer type of person, Phil will help you out with that.
Yeah, most people who have submitted articles have like caveated that they're like, "Oh, sorry, I'm not a good writer. Like, I don't know about this. Doesn't matter. I will edit it so that it is readable, and I will maintain your argument, the arguments of your articles.
Yeah.
I do not impose my, as you can read from any of the articles on the site. In the past week, we published stuff that's calling for Oops all spells to be banned, and then I also published an article that was defending Oops all spells in the format. So like, when it comes to it, I am
unbiased.
I'm an unbiased editor. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, regarding the talks of this conversation, I lay out all of the article at a baseline. Besides giving my opinion as to what should go in the Legacy BNR coming up on June 30th, it just gives us definitions so we know that when we say certain terms or we use certain arguments, that everybody in that conversation is talking about the same thing, because we can talk past each other if we have different understandings as to what words that aren't defined mean.
Yeah. I like this, the four different categories. Anyhow, thank you everybody for watching, and we will catch you on the next one later on. If you made it this far, you probably like Legacy, Pre-Modern, or our sultry voices. So do us a favor.
Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and help keep the Eternal Durdles engine running.
Check out our new donation deck tier on Patreon. You pick the deck, we play it on the channel.
It supports the show, so sleeve up something spicy, completely unplayable, or punish me with a deck that doesn't have Brainstorm in it.
Links are in the description. You can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll check you in the next one.